They lived happily ever after. Miss Andrea Bocelli, we have had a story and a song. That sentence sounds like a fairy tale ending, but Andrea Bocelli's life was never a simple fairy tale. It was a long road filled with fear, pain, doubt, strength, music, and moments that could have broken him but did not. His story began even before he was born, when doctors told his mother something no parent ever wants to hear. In 1958, while she was pregnant, doctors discovered that her baby had congenital glaucoma. They warned her that the child would almost certainly be blind and might face many serious difficulties in life. They advised her to end the pregnancy. Andrea's mother refused. She believed in her child and trusted her heart more than fear or medical predictions. That decision became the first and most important turning point in Andrea's life, even though he would only understand its power years later. Andrea Bocelli was born on September 22, 1958, in a small rural place in Tuscany. Life there was simple and often hard. The country was still recovering from the war, and money was always limited. His family worked a large farm that produced wine and sold machinery. Everyone worked, including the children. Electricity was not always reliable, and comfort was not something people expected. Days were long, filled with physical labor, and evenings were quiet, shared around simple meals. Andrea grew up surrounded by fields, olive trees, vineyards, and the steady rhythm of farm life. From the beginning, he learned discipline, patience, and endurance without even realizing it. As a baby and young child, Andrea spent a lot of time in hospitals. Doctors tried many treatments to save his vision. Some of those treatments sound shocking today. In desperate attempts to reduce pressure in his eyes, leeches were even used. Despite everything, Andrea managed to keep some limited vision until he was about 12 years old. Those hospital stays were frightening and painful, but they also introduced him to something that would change his life forever. His mother would play classical music records by his bed to calm him. The sound of music helped him forget the pain and fear. Slowly, music became his safe place, something that made him feel protected and understood. By the time Andrea was 3, his vision had already weakened enough to make normal childhood activities dangerous. Running through fields or walking between vineyard rows was risky. But as his sight faded, his hearing became sharper. He began copying sounds around him, bird calls, animal noises, and melodies he heard at home. Music was always present in the Bocelli household. Family gatherings were full of Tuscan folk songs, laughter, and shared stories. Andrea absorbed all of it. As the outside world became harder to see, his inner world grew richer. He imagined places, created stories in his mind, and blended imagination with sound. 2 years after Andrea's birth, his younger brother Alberto was born. The brothers grew up together on the farm, sharing chores, meals, and childhood moments. Their family life was simple but warm. Meals were eaten at rough wooden tables made from leftover farm materials. There was teasing, laughter, and love. Andrea often climbed onto a bench and sang as if he were standing on a stage. Even at a young age, there was something natural about performing for him. Singing did not feel like effort. It felt like breathing. When Andrea was 6 years old, he began piano lessons. Because he could not rely on sight, he learned through touch and sound. His fingers memorized the keys, and his ears memorized patterns. His mother continued playing records, and Andrea followed along by feel. By the age of 8, he added the flute and saxophone. Music became more than a hobby. It became a language he spoke fluently. At school, not everything was easy. Some classmates mocked him because of his vision problems. He felt different, and sometimes that difference hurt. Still, he kept going, holding on to music as his anchor. In 1972, when Andrea was just 14, he entered a local singing competition and won. He sang a famous Italian song, and for the first time, he felt the power of music not just as comfort, but as connection. He saw how his voice could move people. That moment planted a seed in his heart, even though he did not yet know where it would lead. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1970, during a soccer game, Andrea was hit in the face by a ball with tremendous force. The impact caused a brain hemorrhage. In an instant, The little vision he still had was gone forever. Doctors tried again to help him, but nothing worked. Andrea became completely blind at the age of 12. The darkness arrived suddenly and fully. He had to relearn how to live. He learned Braille, relearned the piano through touch alone, and faced a deep emotional struggle. Losing his sight so suddenly was devastating, but music became brighter than ever. It was the one part of his life that still felt whole and untouched by loss. School became even harder. Some classmates bullied him, whispering or laughing behind his back. At night, when the house was quiet, Andrea would sit at the family piano and play. He composed simple melodies in secret. Those late hours became his shelter. He turned pain into sound and anger into notes. What started as survival slowly turned into purpose. During the 1970s, Andrea attended secondary school near Pisa. He dictated essays, used Braille textbooks, and fell in love with literature. Sometimes he skipped classes to wander the hills of Tuscany, memorizing poetry and fighting depression. Music and words helped him cope with emotions he did not know how to express otherwise. In 1980, he enrolled at the University of Pisa to study law. He traveled by train and supported himself by tutoring other blind students. He worked extremely hard, not to impress others, but to prove to himself that he could live independently. At night, Andrea sang in piano bars. The places were noisy and smoky. The crowds were often drunk, and the tips were small. He sang popular songs like My Way and used the money to survive and continue his studies. Those nights shaped his voice and his confidence. He learned how to feel an audience, how to hold attention, and how to communicate emotion through sound alone. In 1987, Andrea met Enrica Senzati at one of those piano bars. She was young, and he was older. People talked, but she listened. She helped him read lyrics and described the world he could not see. They married in 1992 and had 2 sons. Even after their marriage ended in 2002, they remained connected through family. Andrea earned his law degree in 1986 and briefly worked as a defense lawyer. The job was stable, but it felt empty. During a case involving a street musician, he realized something important. Music was not just part of his life. It was his life. He left law behind and chose uncertainty instead. Everything changed in 1992 when he was heard singing by the musician Zucchero. Andrea recorded a demo song, following verbal instructions because he could not read sheet music. He was nervous and unsure. When the demo reached Luciano Pavarotti, the response shocked everyone. Pavarotti said the singer was so good that he himself was no longer needed. The song became a massive hit across Europe, and Andrea's life changed overnight. He made his opera debut in 1993, terrified and unsure, but his voice carried him through. Soon after, he performed for massive crowds and entered the Sanremo Music Festival, where he won first place. His debut album sold hundreds of thousands of copies within weeks. Then came Time to Say Goodbye, which became a global phenomenon. A blind boy from rural Tuscany had become a world-famous voice. As his fame grew, so did criticism. Some opera purists felt he did not belong. They said his style was too emotional, too close to pop. Others questioned whether a blind singer could truly perform opera on stage. Andrea responded calmly. He said his blindness did not weaken him. It sharpened him. He explained that he lived inside the music, guided by sound and feeling rather than sight. That debate followed him for years, but his audience only grew larger. Andrea Bocelli became a bridge between worlds, classical and popular, tradition and emotion. His story showed that limits do not define destiny. His life was shaped by struggle, but guided by courage, family, and music. And through it all, he kept singing, turning darkness into light, and pain into beauty. While the arguments continued in theaters, newspapers, and reviews, Andrea quietly worked on something very different. He was not interested in fighting critics with words. Instead, he chose to answer with music. In 2002, he released an album called Sacred Arias. Part of this album was recorded inside the Santa Maria Sopra Minerva Basilica in the Vatican. The church had a natural echo that gently surrounded his voice and gave the recordings a depth and warmth that no modern studio could recreate. You could hear the space itself in the music, as if the walls and history were singing along with him. Sacred Arias became an unexpected phenomenon. It sold more than 5 million copies worldwide and became the best-selling classical album ever recorded by a solo artist. It reached number 1 on classical charts in more than 20 countries and won the Brit Award for Album of the Year. Songs like Ave Maria, recorded inside the ancient chapel, carried a sense of peace and stillness that listeners felt immediately. With the Vatican's support and the album's global success, sacred music quietly moved beyond church walls and entered everyday homes around the world. People who had never listened to classical or religious music before found themselves drawn in by the calm and emotion in his voice. Even after achieving something so historic, Andrea did not stop exploring new directions. In 2004, he released the album Amore. This project surprised many listeners because it blended different styles and cultures. One of the most talked about tracks was a flamenco-inspired version of Besé Mucho. The mix of his Italian operatic voice with Spanish rhythms felt unusual. Some classical fans praised it as bold and refreshing, while others criticized it for being too close to commercial pop music. Over time, however, the song became one of his most loved performances, proving once again that audiences were more open than critics often believed. That same willingness to take risks followed him onto the world's biggest stages. In 2006, Andrea performed at the closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics in Turin. He sang Nessun Dorma and Because We Believe in front of an estimated global audience of 3 billion people. It was one of the largest audiences ever to watch a classical performance. In that moment, he was not just an Italian singer standing on a national stage. He became a symbol of Italian culture and music for the entire world. Behind these powerful public moments was a very strict and disciplined private routine. Andrea often explained that an opera singer must treat the voice the way a professional athlete treats the body. Before important performances or recording sessions, he avoids alcohol completely. He eats lightly and rests as much as possible. He has also spoken openly about avoiding sex before major performances, believing that all energy should be saved for emotional and vocal expression. In interviews, he explained that balance is everything and that excess of any kind can damage the voice. This discipline, repeated year after year, helped him maintain a strong and consistent sound throughout a career that has lasted decades. By the time fans learned about how carefully controlled his life was, he had already sold more than 80 million records. Many people were surprised to discover how much effort and restraint stood behind the romantic warmth of his songs. His influence continued to grow around the world. In July 2010, he headlined the Celebrate Africa concert at the Coca-Cola Dome in Johannesburg during the FIFA World Cup. Around 100,000 fans filled the venue. When he sang Time to Say Goodbye, many in the crowd were moved to tears. The concert was broadcast internationally and became a major cultural moment. Soon after, his album My Christmas sold more than 3 million copies in the United States alone, even though it faced strong competition during the holiday season. Once again, he proved that classical and crossover music could not only survive in modern markets, but dominate spaces usually ruled by pop and rock stars. Years later, that same mix of courage and risk appeared in a very different setting. In 2020, during Italy's strict COVID lockdown, Andrea walked alone into an empty Milan cathedral on Easter Sunday. The streets outside were silent. There was no live audience. He performed a solo concert called Music for Hope, streamed online to millions of people around the world. The event raised about €4 million for hospitals fighting the virus. Many viewers praised him for offering comfort during one of the darkest periods in modern history. Others felt uncomfortable and said the concert seemed inappropriate while the country's death toll was rising. Andrea later admitted that some reactions hurt him deeply and left him feeling humiliated. Still, he said he was proud that the event helped hospitals and brought a moment of reflection to people trapped in isolation. The concert showed how difficult it can be to balance art, grief, and responsibility during a national tragedy. While the world followed his public career, his private life went through many changes. He married Enrica Senzatti after several years of dating. In 1995, their first son, Amos, was born through an emergency C-section after serious complications during the pregnancy. Andrea cancelled several concerts to stay with Enrique during that frightening time. From early on, he faced the tension between his growing career and his responsibilities as a husband and father. Their second son, Matteo, was born in 1997. By the year 2000, Andrea was performing nearly 200 concerts a year. Enrique often spent long evenings alone, preparing dinners that sometimes went untouched because he did not return home. The distance between them grew slowly, more emotional than physical. In 2002, they separated. The divorce remained calm and respectful. There were no public scandals or dramatic accusations. Enrique later explained that the separation came from emotional distance rather than betrayal. They continued living in nearby villas in Tuscany, allowing their sons to remain close to both parents. Andrea reportedly paid substantial yearly support so his children could maintain stability and connection with their family life. That same year marked the beginning of a new chapter. In 2002, at the age of 44, Andrea met 18-year-old Veronica Berti at a party. She later became both his partner and his manager. They connected quickly through music and their shared Tuscan roots. That evening, he sang Occhi de Fata to her, and she later said the atmosphere in the room changed completely, as if the world narrowed to just the two of them. They moved in together that same night. The 25-year age gap quickly became a topic for gossip and criticism in the media, with rumors of a forbidden love spreading through tabloids. Despite the attention, their relationship grew stronger over time. In 2012, Veronica gave birth to their daughter, Virginia. As she grew, Virginia began singing with her father on stage, charming audiences with her natural confidence. On March 21, 2014, Andrea and Veronica were married at the Sanctuary of Montenero in Italy. Through years of public attention, they have consistently said that age was never the real issue. For them, shared values, love for their homeland, and music mattered far more than numbers. Matteo, Andrea's middle child, followed a slower and more careful path toward music. Born in 1997, he grew up surrounded by fame but also by pressure. He loved singing as a boy, but he was too shy to perform in front of his father. Instead, he sang for his mother. He began studying piano at the age of 6 and continued learning music seriously. Still, he avoided stepping directly into the spotlight because he feared being compared to his father at every turn. That changed in 2018, when he was 18 years old. Andrea and Matteo released the duet Fall on Me. The song spread quickly across the internet and marked Matteo's international debut. Andrea spoke openly about his hopes and fears for his son. He warned him about the dangers of fame and reminded him that applause is temporary. Since then, Matteo has performed at major events, including high-profile weddings, and released his own music. Step by step, he has built a career that is connected to his father's legacy but clearly his own. Their duets, blending classical tones with modern pop, have become favorites for fans around the world. Under all these later successes lies a story that began before Andrea ever took his first breath. In 1958, when his mother Eddie was pregnant, she was hospitalized with appendicitis. Doctors warned her that her baby might be born with disabilities and urged her to end the pregnancy. A deeply religious woman, she refused. Andrea was born with congenital glaucoma and later lost his sight completely at the age of 12. That early struggle shaped everything that followed. His life became proof that a decision made in hope can echo across decades, turning hardship into strength and darkness into music. In 2018, Andrea spoke publicly about the choice his mother made before he was born, and he shared her story to support pro-life causes in Italy. Many people were deeply moved by his words. They saw his mother's decision as an act of great courage and faith, and they viewed Andrea's life as proof that her choice had meaning. At the same time, his comments sparked strong criticism. Feminist groups and activists argued that he was using a very personal family story to take a public position on a complex and painful issue. They felt that his statements ignored women's rights and the difficult realities many women face when dealing with pregnancy and abortion. The debate became emotional and divided, but for Andrea, the story of his birth has always been central to who he is. It shapes how he talks about life, belief, and purpose, and he returns to it often in interviews and during concerts. To him, it is not a political message first, but a deeply personal truth that explains how he understands existence and gratitude. His body has been tested in very visible ways throughout his life as well. In July 2010, just days before an important concert, Andrea was riding a horse on his Tuscan property when he was suddenly thrown off. He suffered fractured ribs and was taken to the hospital. Doctors told him clearly that he needed rest and should avoid performing. Despite the pain, Andrea decided to go on with the concert. He wrapped his chest tightly to support the injury and walked onto the stage knowing every breath would hurt. Reporters later wrote about his determination and the physical strain he placed on himself. For many fans, the image of a blind singer standing in pain and refusing to cancel became a powerful symbol of his commitment to music and to the people who came to hear him sing. Life on his Tuscan vineyard has also produced unusual stories. After losing his sight, Andrea developed an extremely sharp sense of smell, which made him very sensitive to changes in his environment. This ability became useful during family wine tastings. In 2005, during one such tasting, he noticed a strange scent in a bottle and became convinced that something was wrong. The situation grew serious, and after drinking the wine, he ended up in the hospital, believing it might have been poisoned by jealous rivals. Authorities later investigated and concluded that the incident was a hoax, but the story spread quickly in the media. It added another dramatic layer to his public image and showed the intense pressure that can come with fame, especially in competitive fields like Italian wine production. It also revealed how heightened senses, while helpful, can sometimes increase fear and suspicion. The year 2020 brought even more controversy. In addition to his Easter concert at the Milan Cathedral, Andrea made public comments about Italy's strict lockdown rules that caused strong reactions. He spoke about personal freedom and suggested that the restrictions were too heavy. Many people interpreted his words as encouraging others to ignore public health measures. His statements spread quickly on social media and led to intense criticism. Some accused him of putting lives at risk by questioning rules meant to protect people during a deadly pandemic. The backlash became so severe that he reportedly received death threats. For safety reasons, he temporarily moved to his home in the United States. This episode once again showed how difficult it can be for public figures to speak about sensitive topics like health and freedom during a global crisis, and how quickly public admiration can turn into anger. Even within his own family, there were emotional challenges. His eldest son, Amos, slowly pulled away from music. Watching his younger brother Matteo rise into the spotlight as a pop singer brought complicated feelings. Amos chose a different path, turning toward business rather than performance. This created a quiet distance between the brothers. They still spoke and spent time together, but unspoken tension remained. In 2023, during a private Christmas dinner in Tuscany, that distance finally began to soften. The family gathered, and Amos and Matteo spoke honestly about pressure, expectations, and the different lives they had chosen. That conversation became a turning point. Word of their reconciliation reached fans, and Andrea later shared messages about the importance of family unity. He reminded people that even famous families must work through jealousy, pride, and emotional pain like anyone else. By 2025, Andrea's story had grown so large that it became the subject of a full documentary film. In September of that year, Andrea Bocelli, Because I Believe premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. The film included never-before-seen footage from his life, including scenes connected to the soccer accident at age 12 that is often linked to the final loss of his sight. It also showed intimate moments from his Grammy experiences and early days growing up in Tuscany. Audiences responded strongly. The documentary earned around $5 million worldwide in its opening weekend and became the highest-grossing music documentary of 2025 at that point. It featured interviews with family members, colleagues, and childhood friends, blending their voices with archival footage. Released during the 30th anniversary of his career, the film felt both like a celebration and an honest reflection on the struggles behind his success. Critics praised its emotional openness and its willingness to show not only triumph, but also the cost of achieving it. That same year brought a long-awaited professional milestone. At the Grammy Awards in February 2025 in Los Angeles, Andrea won Best Opera Solo Performance for an aria recorded during his residency in Napa Valley. The performance had been recorded live in front of 15,000 fans and carried his familiar mix of technical skill and deep emotion. He won against legendary artists, which made the victory even more meaningful. After many nominations over the years, this was his first solo Grammy win in that category. At 67 years old, his acceptance speech moved the audience as he thanked his family, collaborators, and fans who had supported him for more than 3 decades. His connection with global sports continued as well. On December 5, 2025, he performed Nessun Dorma at the FIFA World Cup 2026 final draw in Washington, D.C., sharing the stage with pop star Robbie Williams. About 2,000 fans watched inside the arena, while more than 1 billion viewers saw the event worldwide. It was his third appearance at a FIFA event after earlier World Cup ceremonies. Organizers chose him again because of his unique ability to connect with people across cultures. During the event, FIFA announced a $1 million donation to the Andrea Bocelli Foundation to support music programs for children. Clips of his performance spread rapidly online, turning a simple draw into a shared cultural moment. Shortly before that, Andrea released a more intimate project. In November 2025, he shared a family Christmas single titled The Greatest Gift with his children Matteo and Virginia. They recorded the song in a Tuscan vineyard, and it included a solo by Virginia, who was only 10 years old at the time. The song suggested that the Bocelli musical legacy would continue into another generation. The video reached 3 million views on YouTube within its first week. Critics praised the warmth of the song and the natural blend of the 3 voices. Behind-the-scenes footage showed the family laughing among the vines, making the project feel personal and sincere. A limited vinyl release sold out within 2 days, and proceeds supported the foundation's music education programs. By 2025, Andrea Bocelli's financial success reflected his long career. His net worth passed $100 million, built from record sales, global tours, and ventures like his luxury wine brand. Still, he has often said that his foundation matters more to him than money. That year, the Andrea Bocelli Foundation helped around 1,000 children living in extreme poverty and reached about 5,000 people through education and arts programs. One of its most meaningful projects was the launch of Braille music programs in Haiti, giving blind students the tools to learn and perform music. Andrea personally visited some of these sites and watched children perform his songs using Braille notation. In October 2025, he received the United Nations Global Humanitarian Award in recognition of this work. The Foundation's annual report showed a strong increase in funding, proving that its impact continued to grow and that his legacy extended far beyond the stage.